correct?
Kühne.
Okay, Kühne. So he's the CEO of the Metora Data Science. So Mr. Nicholas is also the founders of the company, and he has more than 15 years experience in working across most exciting frontier of marketing in Africa and Asia. So, and he has cut his teeth working on the Africa most adopted brands and headed the marketing MTV Africans and launched a comedy central into the Africas. So he has a degree in marketing and communication in University of Johannesburg and a chartered marketeers as well as early adopter in data science in fields. So without further ado, can I have Mr. Kühne? And our third speaker is Mr. Premkumar. He's the data scientist, and then he also part of our lecturers in Heriot University previously. I saw his CV. And then his areas of research or areas of work is actually a machine learning and intelligence with data science. And then he has more than 8-9 years of experience in all these data scientists, as a data scientist. And key skills included data mining, supervision, machine learning, reinforcement learning, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, can I have Mr. Prem? And last but not least, we have representative from PETRONAS, Mr. Arief, the head of program management for digital upstreams. So he shared with me that he actually worked a lot of projects for PETRONAS. He has been in 8 years in PETRONAS. And he has a bachelor degree in electrical and electronic engineering. Have more than 18 years experience in oil and gas industry and worked in Malaysia, China, as well as Australia. He's currently the project manager for the digital project that integrates PETRONAS LNG business and responsible for various projects in PETRONAS. So can I have Mr. Ariel on stage? Alright, thank you. So after hearing all the impressive bio data that we hear from the panelists, I assume that you are quite interested to know more about their views on IR 4.0 for the oil and gas industry, especially what we are challenged by. And this morning, you hear Professor Mushtaq also mentioning that all the cognitive knowledge or the ability that we have nowadays is actually challenged by AI. And just to give you a bit background, I'm also involved in one of the projects together with Academic Science Malaysia. We are talking about how do we governance AI or machine learning, or how do we come up with policy to support all these activities in the country. So that's a little bit of my background, and then I will hear from the experts on all of you what this impacts us and how shall we handle them accordingly. So I would like to start inviting Mr. Adrin from Velesto. So the first question to you is, how does the Industrial Revolution 4.0 reshape oil and gas recruitment? So what do you view on this?
Okay, it's a very good question because when you Google, so I won't be too shy saying I Google. The thing is, nobody has a real answer. So just a quick recap of what I said this morning. Right now, we are in a situation where the economy of the oil and gas is being challenged. And the reason being is, it's not because of the fault of the oil and gas industry by itself. It is actually because we are too good at what we do. Right? That is in fact the matter. So when we talk about a downturn, we are actually in an oil boom. We are producing a lot of oil. Okay, so in the mindset of people talking about, okay, should we actually join the oil and gas industry? It is actually an exciting time to be, because there are a lot of projects out there overproducing oil, right? So, but the challenge is then, because we are so good at what we do, we may or may not actually need the same people that we have been employing all this while, right? And that is a fundamental problem. That is a fundamental thought that we actually need to put in. So basically, it's like this, right? If I'm so good at what I'm doing with the current people that I have, do I actually need more of the same people? What I'm actually going to look at is the possibilities of the future. So this morning we're talking about a little bit of what the oil and gas industry actually already has, and then what we look for the future. So when you see in terms of the recruitment, there is still that requirement to actually at least have the basic skills. And because of the oil boom or the downturn, because there are less graduates of petroleum engineering, the recruitment itself has expanded to actually look for the talent from engineering or even non-engineering to see what they can bring to the table. It is just like when we were in IR 3.0, everybody was really talking about bringing up the skills of mechanical, electrical, right? Right now, it is the inherent talent of people already aware of digitalization. They are already well stocked, even though they are petroleum engineers or mechanical engineers or chemical engineers. They have the ability to code. So you will see the recruitment actually includes those pluses which differentiates them from the current stock of people that we actually already have. And because we have those differentiators, we are able to then say that, okay, so now we are no longer just looking at the traditional projects that we have been executing all this while. It will be enhanced because the new incoming recruitments are bringing something that the current stock doesn't have. So for example, like how I am a computer engineer, but that was 20 years ago, right? For the 20 years I have been in oil and gas, I have been stuck in my ways, and of course I am too seasoned to now possibly create something new. But it's something that the graduates, when they come in, through our new recruitment process, when we started to look for that ability to be in the digitalization area, that we can actually say now, with further projects, we can now look at, you will see some operators actually looking at now solar-powered platforms, wind-powered platforms. And this is offshore, where we actually produce oil and gas. Previously, you will not be able to do that because the knowledge is not homegrown in the company. But with new recruitment, because we actually look for that talent, so I think I think it's very important that when the graduates are actually going into the job industry, while when you read through the advertisements, it may not actually actually list down all these extra requirements. Actually, we are looking for it, but truthfully, we don't know who we are looking for. Right? But when you look at the possibilities, really, it is when we say we need somebody with digital awareness, we need somebody with coding experience. But when the interviewees actually come, they actually say, he actually has more to bring. And that is what we are interested in.
All right, thank you. Looking at the recruitment side. So I will go through one by one on different aspects, and then we'll go down in the next couple of years.
Thank you for that question. Hello everyone. Are we awake? Yes. All right, okay, Mr. Obviously tell. It's been very interesting seeing from when the first time I was in Malaysia about 14 years ago how much has changed in this country. And I think Malaysia is sitting in a very interesting place in the global economy, that it is on the cusp of being a proper, fully developed country. And with that comes a whole bunch of benefits, but also some downsides. The benefits are that there is at least 20 years worth of growth projected for the Malaysian market. So in terms of, a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, Malaysia economy is so shit, oh, Malaysia, the government, all of these negative things happening in the country. However, you are in an economy that is growing, the fundamentals are right, the courses that you're doing, there are more universities here, I think, than are in the whole of Africa.
Yes.
There's a lot of universities here. And I get a lot of engineering and accounting CVs in my inbox, too many to actually to handle. So it means that there's a good, young, educated population here. Some of the negatives are that a lot of the legacy businesses here find it very difficult to change from old style thinking to new style thinking. So in majority of the research that I've seen, when companies are asked what are the challenges of applying 4.0 into their businesses, is 70% of it is cultural, as in the mindset of the business, versus 30% which is the technological side. And one of the benefits Malaysia has is you don't have a lot of legacy technology clogging up your system. I see the potential for Malaysia to leapfrog multiple countries, specifically Europe, but especially places like China and Japan and your neighbors in Singapore, because you don't have the legacy technology that they spend billions or millions of dollars on, that they've got to now retrofit or change. Malaysia has the ability now to use new technology, which is much cheaper, open source technology that's also been developed locally, to create new opportunities and also to get efficiencies much faster than a lot of these developed countries. So there is a challenge for Malaysian businesses to proceed into the future, to become data-driven and to do digital transformation. Because if they don't, other countries are going to eat their lunch, and that would be a great pity.
All right, thank you. So we will take note on that for the futures engineers. When you work to the company, please do send the message right to the companies. All right, now I'd like to invite the third speakers.
How are you feeling? Okay, so answering Prof. Denny's question. So yes, I have been a lecturer, but one challenge that I do face, even until now, is educating both the younger and also the older generations on IR 4.0. Okay, probably it's not so much of a difficulty to teach a younger generation, like those who are already using their iPads and their MacBooks and so forth, to actually probably tell them about game development, for example. Okay, you want to talk to them about programming and something like that. It's quite easy to tell them, but you want to go to the older folks, and then you want to talk to them about you have to pick up this particular skill. Leave your Excel and PowerPoint behind. Instead, pick up your Python and Power BI. So it's very, very difficult. So one of the ways that that I usually practice is by you have to raise awareness in the first place. Why we have to leave the legacy systems behind and move to the newer systems, and that is mainly because of, for example, when we talk about legacy systems, you have the older computers that can probably deal with a lesser amount of data easily. But then when you're coming into the newer technology, for example, even when you're talking about oil and gas data, legacy systems, we used to use probably Excel sheets to actually analyze certain number of columns, and we will probably come up with the total oil in stock, okay, stock tank oil in place. So, but nowadays, for you to actually come up with that conclusion for something that is underground, you don't know anything about it. You don't just use an Excel sheet. You can use other variables, like for example, weather data. You can use seismic data, and you can combine all of that. An Excel sheet, unfortunately, it does not have that ability to do that. So what you need to do, you need to probably migrate from Excel, traditional Excel, to newer technologies like using Python, leveraging Python, or even if you don't use Python, go into one of these cloud service providers that actually already have this, this plug-and-play technology that can analyze lots of data in it. So by raising awareness to people, whether it's like students or even those folks working in the industry, that is one way to addressing the problem.
All right, thank you. A last panel, I will just pose you a question first, quick questions. What is the futures of Malaysia in light of industrial revolutions, mean IR 4.0? So what do you think, especially you are in PETRONAS, it's one of the major oil and gas company in the country. So what do you think the adoptions of IR 4.0 into the company, or what is the future for us?
All right, thank you, Denny.
thank you for having me here today. I am, as how Denny introduced me, I am the program manager for Upstream Digital in PETRONAS. If you ask me what am I doing, I can't answer that. In my previous life, I was a project manager. I built oil platforms. I did FDP, field development studies. I can relate more to petrol engineering than digital or IR 4.0. But hearing from the three speakers here, they've mentioned on the challenges on how we embark into the IR 4.0 journey, right? From Adrin just now, I heard capability, right? What kind of skill sets do you require? What kind of person or persona do you require? Kühne mentioned infrastructure, right? What do you need? And from Prem, I heard how do you immerse people? How do you make people understand what we're doing? So, from Malaysia perspective, right? And from certain extent from PETRONAS perspective, we understand that this is the next step, next thing that we need to embark onto. And PETRONAS president has made digital as part of the corporate agenda. It has been since 2017. We must go on board this transformation, or else we're going to be left behind. So, in order for us to embark on this journey, right, what do we do, right? So we need to set the infrastructure or the baseline right. From one perspective, we need to ensure that there's capability. We need to upskill and reskill people, like how related to what Adrin mentioned, right? We have, as a mature energy organization, we have good subsurface skill set, subsurface expertise. So with the new technology, how do we apply the analytics, the new technology into the domain knowledge? So that is something that we are currently doing. We are reassessing our technical professional to ensure that they are equipped with this kind of skill set. Okay? And we also need to scan what is out there for us to apply into the business. Right? So I'm not sure whether you're aware, in late last year, just set up our venture capital hub, PETRONAS Corporate Capital Ventures. Right? Venture capital, to drive technology innovation and to maintain our competitive edge and to drive the growth of our business. Okay. Also, there are a lot of things out there, that can be applied, but we need to do some prioritization. Right? We need to ensure that whatever that we apply can give us value. That is another thing that we are setting up. And I think to ensure that this agenda is successful, we need to ensure that we have a good digital infrastructure. So basically, we need to have a better, faster and secure connection. So those are the things that, from Malaysian perspective, that we are setting up the baseline.
All right, thank you for the sharing. Based on what I hear from four of the panelists, they are quite generally divided into the physical, which is the infrastructures of developments, as well as the human developments. So let's start with the human developments part of it. So I think most of the college, I think when every of the session that I moderated are related to IR 4.0, this is the first question that I ask. And since it's always the popular questions, and I got it here as well. Do you all think IR 4.0 will replace the current job? And will all these future engineers in are sitting here, they will not get job? So I think, you are the employers here, so representing the employers, you might assure them.
Here have shirts made by hand. So somebody has picked the cotton, used a spindle to pull the threads together. In the first industrial revolution, when those first steam machines came in, everyone thought the world was going to end because machines are going to take over jobs. But what happened? People were moved from having to do horrible manual labor to becoming technicians. So being somebody who now, instead of being scraping for digging out onions in the ground, was now sitting in a lit room using a sewing machine, and it's progressed like that. This is quite a young crowd, so I don't know if you even know what I'm talking about next. Have any of you used a film camera? All right.
Yes,
So
I do.
okay, so 1 or 2 hands. That was a super technical, super awesome, very fancy career once. You used to, take your photographs, take it to this place, this big machine, it would disappear into the back, and these technicians would develop the film. Now, I can bet all of you, if I can say, who in the last year has printed any film? Okay, giant nerd at the back there. Good point. Okay, so if you want photographs, go to that guy, because that takes skill. So all of these jobs, all of these high-tech roles that we had in the past have all vanished. I mean, we spoke a little bit earlier about BlackBerry. BlackBerry transformed our business life. That little red light destroyed our weekends because you had to do emails. Now nobody's got BlackBerries. And what's happened is the more technology, more AI, and more machine learning opportunities there are, the more new job opportunities it opens up. So I'm in the more creative field. All of these are very smart guys. I can count to 100 most days. So these guys have, can count to 110 at least. So, but my side is on the creative side in terms of how do we apply data science and what is the next wave? So what are the new jobs that we can create out of data science? And amongst you, I'm sure 10% of you are going to be entrepreneurs one day and are going to utilize data science in some way. Not as a Python programmer, not as somebody who knows how to use R, but as somebody who's thought of, okay, I've got all of this data, all of the generic concepts in data science have been codified already, what do I do with it? And it's going to be up to not our generation, I don't think we're old donkeys now, but I think for your lot, you need to start thinking about beyond all of the algorithms in terms of what can you do with big data and how, and what new roles, what new products and that are going to, are you going to bring to the world. So that's the exciting part of it.
Right, thank you. Good to hear that. Mr. Adrin, what's your view on this? I mean, you are Velesto, so do you think they will get a job or you're going to hire them in the next couple of months? I think there are a few graduates. Who is going to graduate soon? Raise up your hand, look for a job. Now's the time, okay.
Actually, a lot of graduates come up to me and actually ask the same question. Will I be able to do what I actually want? Right? So right now, when you actually think about it, but then when I ask the question, okay, what do you actually want? Or because I study X, I want to do X, all right? And that is actually the same kind of mindset that is also, whether it's young generation or whatever generation X, Y, or Z, or even the older generation, they are always comfortable on what they have been doing all this while. They just want to continue doing that. And that is the mindset that actually is prohibitive to IR 4.0. Eventually, for any company or any country that is reluctant to move on because of own self-interest or self-company interest or collection of group interest, that is when they will die out. And so I think when we actually talk about moving forward, the mindset should be, I want to make myself obsolete. Because, so, I will get to the good part. Right now I'm telling the gloomy part first, okay? So for example, drilling engineering, okay? So some of you maybe are petroleum engineers, but some of you are not. So drilling engineering is basically learning the science of being able to drill wells to extract, whether it's geothermal or oil, right? But there are strict design requirements, that typically is from education or on-the-job training, and then with experience, you start designing better and better. But now, companies are actually coming up with software where they take the information that they had before, with those strict rules, they are already coming out with a design product. So the drilling engineer is now just simply the person feeding the information and taking out the information, which is by far more accurate than what a human can actually do. They have less mistakes, right? So they just become somebody who feeds and somebody who takes out and then pass it over to the next person to carry it out. And that is the same trend that is happening to whether you're a reservoir engineer or geologist. The models that you have learned, whether you're a chemical engineer or electrical engineer, actually it's the same. It's not specific for oil and gas. For technical people, you learn these equations, models, which actually can easily be fed to a database, which actually then can be processed, and the product is actually much better than you. So, but because you want to progress, you actually want to have those systems. So eventually, these systems, it doesn't matter wherever you are, they will be talking to each other. They will no longer need you to feed and read and pass it over. So, what is then your role? The role will then be how to actually use that ecosystem to provide different value. So I think that the answer is not really clear because I think it has to be inherent from how you actually thrive in that method. But really, it's not about whether you will go to oil and gas, you will go to on the powers or the construction or this and that. The effect will be very, very similar. So in order to actually take the first step should be the development of the character on the competency. Because, let me tell you, the past 20 years, the only thing that has got me through is the ability to talk. And that was something that I learned as a debate team during my high school years, university years, right? That differentiator is what you actually need. So, but in IR 4.0, the differentiator is something that you do not need to actually learn from university. You would actually be able to develop those skills, develop that ability to contribute by yourself. Because again, if you already know that the jobs are going to be less, it doesn't make sense for somebody to tell you the good news that don't worry, it will be there. But the good news is jobs, just like what Kühne was saying, will be there, will be different form. And with that different form, it is your responsibility, because it's whether your parents or a company or whoever has sent you to have this opportunity, to also then use the same amount of time to equip yourself for the new jobs. You can't be learning to be a truck driver forever because there are no more. There's not going to be any more trucks. Everything's going to be self-driving. So eventually, all of this technical work is going to be done by something else, something or someone, right? And then you need to figure out, okay, how do I then position myself? Whether I am now the programmer, because I have the inherent knowledge, because you see here already an example of somebody who has the project management experience, but he uses his technical know-how now to actually develop infrastructure. And if you have that mindset, then whenever you interact with the employer, you will make that visible. Versus asking the employer, what do you have, does it fit with what I studied for 4 years?
All right, thank you. So I'll do a bit of follow-up questions on this because it's a popular question here as well. I guess probably most of the rooms is petroleum engineering especially, and they heard about all these IR 4.0, they start to be nervous. They haven't heard about what is a Python, what's Power BI. So I think they will start to be nervous. That's why the question was pop up. They say, shall I consider to do an MSc in data science before I go into the industry? So Mr. Prem, do you want to give some comments on this to our students, fellow students here?
Okay, so this is the question that I usually get also when I give talks outside. But just quick show of hands. How many of you can't wait to stop studying and start working? Okay, so one thing, let me just be brutally honest with you, learning never stops. And there's a saying also, what you know is the size of your fist, and what you don't know is the size of the world. Okay, one thing you will realize, okay, now you're in your bachelor's degree, you can go to your master's, but once you learn master's in data science, you will realize that, oh my god, I don't know so much more. I need to learn. Then you will probably want to go your PhD, you want to probably go to your postdoctorate and all that. You will probably end up as an academician, right? So that is one thing that, I always ask the people as well. I mean, even the students who come and ask me, can I do data science? Yes, data science is a field now. It is in a boom right now. If you know data science now, if you go to any company, companies will be like, more than willing to actually hire you right now. Probably in the next year, 2 years, but what happens in 4 years' time? You don't know. So same thing when, I think I remember back in 2010 or 2011, lots of them were actually doing petroleum engineering. Lots of them, MSc, BEng, everyone. And then in 2015, 2016, they were all jobless. Why? Because they were not keeping up to the trend. Okay, the industry was already changing. So one thing that I would say is, you must always be relevant to the industry. I totally echo with Nicholas and Mr. Adrin there that, he said, it doesn't matter whether you're a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, petroleum engineer, whatsoever, you must know what the industry needs right now. So for example, just because you know data science doesn't mean you're going to be doing data science till the end. You may probably use a portion of data science to probably develop other applications in the industry. Like for example, he mentioned about the drilling software. So drilling software, okay, it uses data, but how do you deliver the software to the end user? You will probably need some other skills like web development skills or application skills. So just by learning data science alone doesn't solve your problem. So what I'm saying is, if you have the relevant skills in like petroleum engineering or mechanical engineering, use that and also learn the other skills that can add value to what you already know. Okay, if you love reservoir engineering, that's great. I love reservoir engineering as well. I love numerical simulation. But I also try to use, how can you use those data and combine it with data science, and that adds value to me right now. Okay, so that is something that I would always stress to students out there.
Right, thank you. So I think one of our MCs actually came from the actuarial science, so he's probably the odd one to ask these questions. So he said, do you need actuarial scientists or data scientists in oil and gas industry at this era of time, especially you are working on the data management in the PETRONAS, so probably he's interested to hear this from you.
Okay. Before I answer that, if I were to say the word digital, what do you mean? What does it mean to you? What is the definition of digital to you? Anybody want to try?
Anyone want to try? What do you understand about digital? Analog digital?
It's hard to explain, right? I can relate to Prem just now, right? For PETRONAS, because if you ask that question to 10 different people, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. But for PETRONAS, digital is defined as the innovative way to combine information and technology to raise human and machine performance. So there's a word human and machine there. It's not just machine, it's not all, it's human and machine. So the short answer to your question is yes. We require people with actuarial or data science knowledge. Right? I've spoken about upskilling and reskilling. From subsurface or petroleum engineering side, we have a very structured and matured assessment of our technical professionals, right? It's basically to ensure that our technical professionals or employees are well equipped with domain knowledge. But along the way, we realized that this is no longer sufficient. Right? That's why since I think 1.5 years back, we've established, PETRONAS established data science department. Right? They are aggressively recruiting. Okay. I had a conversation with Alistair during lunch just now. He's the head of your data science department, right? And I asked him a question. Which is easier, to complement domain expert with data science knowledge, or to convert data scientist into a petroleum engineer? Right? He don't have an answer. But again, these two knowledge is complementing each other, right? You need to add value, like what I mentioned just now. Add value to yourself, similar like petroleum product, right? Crude, after that you can add value, you can convert into LNG, you can convert to a different type of fuel, right? You need to add value to yourself, right? If you are currently a graduate with petroleum engineering degree or going to graduate, this new knowledge will add value to yourself, because this is the future. Okay, PETRONAS is serious about this, and we are looking at people with not just having one particular expertise. You need to vary your expertise. You need to complement yourself, add value to yourself. So yeah, that's my.
Right. I hear this reskilling, unskilling, and some of the development that we are talking about, human developments. But as a fresh graduate, I mean, they're holding a degree of petroleum engineering or chemical engineering, mechanical engineering. They don't have ability to actually, what you all mentioned, looking for complement yet, because they're still new. They just finished their 4 years degree, undergraduates. So when your first employment, so means whether you're going to employ this guy or not. So what is the first criterion that you look for? Because obviously I do understand that you would like to have a complement skill and so, but that's probably come into the later stage where there are more experienced engineers, where you look at, okay, I can converting the mechanical engineers into petroleum or data scientists into petroleum or vice versa. But as a fresh grad here, what do you think the first criterions that you should look for, other than the debate skills that I'm here just now? What are the other options or skills that they should equip with before they're entering the workforce in the industry? Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, just to relate to myself, back in 2001, when I graduated computer engineering, right, the only skill that I actually had, I actually studied, was microprocessor design. So I can design ALUs, multipliers, put everything designed very, very well on a chip. But back then, the only opportunity to have a job in microprocessor design was up in Penang with either Intel or AMD. And because at that point, hardware, right now software is all the rage, but back then hardware was the focus, so they didn't need many more engineers. Right, so, and when I started my first day as a drilling engineer, I had no idea anything about oil and gas. So right now, you are more equipped. For example, if you are an electrical engineer, you can actually go into many, many industries. As a chemical engineer, there's still many, many industries, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's even any industrial, so there's opportunities abound, right? You're not just limited to that one option. But for myself, I was immediately immersed into a situation that I'm not familiar with, right? So even though I can talk my way out of anything, but reality is that ability to just adapt. So the next 6 months was all about self-learning. I basically just took copious amounts of information about oil and gas, studied myself, there was no teachers, right? And then just proved that the basic fundamentals of what we have developed throughout the 4 or 5 years in college is indeed of value, because we can, it doesn't matter what we do, we can immediately contribute. So I think that self-reliance is actually very, very important, because nobody, okay, let's say for example, in the moment where our MC is going to look for a job, at that moment, After 3 months, 0 advertisements for data analysts is out there. What are you going to do then? Right? You could spend, just because, you know, in the natural luxury that we have now, we can spend 2 or 3 years still live with our mom and dad. We could. Or we could just take the bull by the horns and just say, I am self-reliant. I will be able to enter this industry. I just have to get through the first hurdle of proving myself through the interview. But it doesn't end there. The moment you are able to get through that interview, it is then still proving yourself that it doesn't matter what I started with. The only thing that matters is where I end. So, with that mentality, the self-reliance is something that will carry you forward, will propel you, regardless of where you are.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kühne, what's your view on this? Because being an entrepreneur yourself, so what kind of ability they're looking for from your future employees?
So can I ask by a show of hands, how many of you know exactly what job you want to do? Like exactly, you know, this is what I'm going to do. Anyone? See, that's part of the challenge, is that at your age, the world really is your oyster. You have so many choices. So what I look for when I am looking for new employees is that they know what they want to achieve. And I think part of this process in yourselves is you need to say, what is it that I actually want to do? What makes me happy? And a lot of you are never going to touch an oil rig or see any oil or any hydrocarbons of any sort other than filling your car with PETRONAS fuel. Which is a good thing, because a lot of you, I know Prem from data science, not from the petroleum industry, and we've got 2 data scientists working with us who studied petroleum engineering and have never set foot, if a lump of coal or a spot of oil landed on them, they wouldn't know the difference. So if you know exactly what you want to do, if you want to be an actuarial scientist and you want to prevent churn or fraud in a business, and that's what excites you, then you will find that role, and you will find that what it does is it narrows down your future opportunities. You say there are only 10 companies that do X, and I need to, on LinkedIn or on the news or stalking, find these 5 people who are at this business who will give me the opportunity. That's where focus comes in. If you know exactly what you want to do, it just narrows. It's like blinkers on a horse. All you see is the race. All you see is your track that you're going to follow on. Most of us don't have that. So you've got to try and build your own blinkers and say, okay, let me try and define a little bit clearer what is the industry I want to be in. And the first industry that you get in is not going to be the last industry that you get in. I come from an advertising and branding industry. I've worked at, through banks, pie manufacturers, MTV, comedy stores, now in data science. My career I've had master classes in all of these various areas, and I'm sure you'd have seen that in your career as well. A year here, hopping from flower to flower to flower, squeezing out the value out of these different roles until you find something where you are excited. So some of you are going to be entrepreneurs, and you might think, oh, I need to wait a couple of years before I become an entrepreneur because I need to learn from somebody else. That's one way to do it. The other way is just to go for it. You don't have mortgages, you don't have children, you don't have cats and dogs and all of these things holding you back now. Do it. This is the time to fail, because you folks are also leaving home later, having children later, so you've got more time to fail than us old folks. I'm an entrepreneur, that's why I've got no hair as well, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So learning on somebody else's dime, for example, working at a PETRONAS and making mistakes there, and as they're learning how to apply these new technologies, is a way to do it. And my final piece of little wisdom here is, a lot of you are going to be more knowledgeable or smarter than the people that are going to be hiring you in terms of your studies and so on. You need to remain 5 minutes ahead of everyone. Not 5 years, not 10 years, you don't need to think about space. You need to be 5 minutes ahead of all of your colleagues and ahead of your bosses. That means reading, listening to the news, and continuously improving on something called your talent stack. You need to have a foundation, which is your maths and science and engineering foundation, that you can start building your soft skills, like you're mentioning. And it's very true, having that little differentiator of being able to do public speaking separated you from hundreds of other guys who may be even better than you, but didn't have that additional angle that you had. So try and improve your talent stack by adding things. I know you do chess, that's a fantastic thing to add on. Some of you do Toastmasters. Do things that are out of your comfort zone. It will be very valuable for you. So that would be my challenge to you. And again, when I'm looking for new staff members, I'm looking for people who either know what they want to do or have a vision of where they'd like to go. It can change. Have a vision, it can change tomorrow, but have some kind of blinkers on. It will help, it will be very valuable.
Alright, thank you. So probably I think Heriot-Watt students actually have benefit of going through the Empower program, so at least some of them actually develop their impact statement so they know what to do in the future. Right, so I will twist a little bit on the questions on talking about development, on the talent development. So we actually talked about hardware, which is the infrastructures. So Mr. Adrin, I think we hear just now from Mr. Kühne and Mr. Prem about the existing, maybe, should I use the word dinosaur, billion-dollar software or equipment they have purchased to do the best thing they have done over the years. However, with the digitalization, so IR 4.0 is coming into the pictures, how do we transform the company, especially as big as PETRONAS? You know, we hear from Mr. Prem just now, they mentioned also, all these companies have invested billions of dollars to actually build out all the infrastructure they have. So how they adopt into the new change, into the new industry changes of all the IR 4.0 into the industry?
From digital perspective, right, data is what they say is the new one, right? So we are putting emphasis on data. Right? We need to take care of our data. I want to introduce you to now to the data value chain. Okay. The first part of the value chain is we capture the data. So this is when you get some reading from your gauge, when you produce a report, right? The next part of the value chain is data curation or curation of the data. This is where the software comes into picture, right? We use data, we put the data into the software to curate some insights, right? Data in its raw form doesn't make any sense, right? And then next is consuming the data. So how do you use the data in your day-to-day business life? And most importantly, acting on the data, right? So let's touch on the curation part because that's related to the question. In previous time, right, we depended a lot on software to consume the data and generate insights. That is how we make decisions. But now, right, we need to make it even more faster, right? So we need to add curation, add analytics into the curation part, not just like processing data, not like your trial or your all savings, right? But we need to have a bit of analytics just to make it faster because we've generated a lot of data. If you ask any company, data capture is their most favorite part. You want to install gauges, you want to produce this report, you know. But when it comes to curation, we are a bit lacking. Right? This is where we need to not to say move away from all these dinosaur software you mentioned, but how do we produce more insights, get more insights, add more value to the data that we have from the output of the software. So this is where data science or advanced analytics comes into picture. So curation part is not just output of the software, it's not just processing, but how do you add value by applying analytics to the curation part. So does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you. So I will pose the next question to Mr. Prem. So hearing from what our Mr. Arief talking about,
appreciation to to the panelists. First, for COO of Velesto Energy, Mr. Adrin, Shafil, Ahmad, Nasir. Next, for CEO and founder of Metora Data Sciences Sendirian Berhad, Nicholas Kühne. Data scientist for Shell, Mr. Premkumar. And head of program management for PETRONAS Upstream Digital, Mr. Arief Budiman. Can you please have a group photo?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure